A low thrum vibrated through Xyler, the curiosity easing into orbit above Earth. The planet spun beneath them, a vibrant tapestry of land and sea concealing a species steeped in irrationality. Beside him, Thrax's mandibles ticked, a metronome of disapproval. Another fruitless circuit, Thrax rasped, his voice like shale grinding on shale. These energy spikes are negligible to a squandering of resources. Xyler tuned out the commander's perpetual gloom, already absorbed by the sensor data, painting his vision to him. The fluctuations were far from insignificant. Intriguing that the phenomenon unlike any he'd documented across 1,000 inhabited worlds. Signatures localized, Commander, Xyler reported, his tone even. Concentrated pockets, urban centers primarily, and remarkably patterned. Pattern like what? Human incompetence. Thrax scoffed, the sound brittle. Xyler pivoted, his multifaceted gaze locking onto Thrax's armored face. Pattern like procreation, Commander. More specifically, mammalian gestation cycles. Thrax's chitinous brow ridges pinched. Procreation, of what import? They multiply like space dust, irrelevant. Xyler, however, was already immersed in the cascading data. Hormonal surges, mitotic bursts, bioelectrical storms. Human reproduction, a process so convoluted, so inefficient, so intrinsically organic, a puzzle. Xenarian propagation was a sterile ballet of genetic blueprints and nutrient baths. This bordered on pandemonium. The energy emissions, Xyler murmured, they amplify as gestation progresses, culminating just before birth. Parturition, Thrax echoed, struggling to follow. Are you suggesting the act of birthing emits some detectable signature? More than a signature, Commander, a resonance, a symphony of biochemical events. For the first time, a sliver of something akin to zeal colored Xyler's voice. I require closer scrutiny. Target these. Hospitals, as they designate them, and domestic units. Thrax sputtered aghast. Domestic units? You wish to observe their mating rituals? This is scientific inquiry, not some grotesque peep show. It is scientific, Commander, Xyler corrected, a hard edge now present. And these mating rituals, as you flippantly call them, are key to unraveling this phenomenon. The energy is most intense within these kinship groups. Observe the gestating female's interaction with her partners. Chart the emotional currents. Correlate them to the energy surges. Thrax's mandibles clicked louder, a frantic rhythm. Emotional currents? Xyler, you are straying into domains best left untouched. Human emotions are capricious, volatile, a perilous unknown. An unknown we must decipher. Xyler insisted. He turned back to the viewport, his gaze anchored to the swirling canvas below. Already, his mind conjured data streams, intricate algorithms, the promise of groundbreaking discoveries. He saw not volatile emotions, but measurable energy. The curiosity adjusted its position, its sensors zeroing in on a sprawling metropolis. Xyler directed probes to specific locations. Pristine, sterile hospital rooms, cluttered, vibrant homes echoing with infant cries. He observed, captivated, as humans interacted. The tentative tenderness of a father cradling his child, the weary patience of a mother hushing a crying infant. One family, in particular, drew his attention that a young woman, heavy with child, possessed a grace that belied her condition. He watched her interact with her consort. Awkward displays of affection, shared laughter, quiet moments of connection. Xyler felt a strange chasm. The data was lucid, yet the meaning remained elusive. What was the purpose of this elaborate performance? Why expend such vast resources on a process that, from a purely logical framework, was utterly wasteful? They are illogical, Xyler stated, more to himself and to Thrax, who continued to grumble about wasted potential. They squander vast amounts of energy on nurturing on emotional bonds. It is baffling. Thrax grunted, disgusted. They're a pestilence, Xyler. A chaotic, irrational pestilence, and you risk contagion from their madness. Xyler ignored him, zooming in on the woman's countenance, capturing a fleeting expression of elation, or perhaps it was fear, impossible to discern. Human expressions were so nuanced that, so frustratingly ambiguous that he knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within his core programming, that he had to comprehend this, he had to unravel the enigma of human reproduction. Even if it necessitated bending protocol, even if it meant defying Thrax, even if it meant jeopardizing everything. The subject, Sarah Walker. The shimmering projections rippled across Xyler's console, each a window into a different facet of Earth's bewildering reproductive rituals. He witnessed the sterile precision of assisted conception, the communal celebration of water births, the hushed reverence of adoption ceremonies. Data streamed across his vision. Hormonal fluctuations, genetic markers, emotional responses measured in microvolts. The sheer variety was overwhelming, a chaotic orchestra compared to the streamlined efficiency of Xenarian propagation. He ignored the insistent chime of his comm unit. Commander Thrax's patience was wearing thin, but Xyler was close to he. Needed a baseline, a subject that represented the species at its most stable. The energy signatures emanating from expecting mothers were particularly potent, swirling vortexes of life force that both fascinated and disturbed him. His fingers danced across the holographic keyboard, filtering through terabytes of information scavenged from Earth's digital networks. He excluded subjects with compromised immune systems, those living in densely polluted areas, individuals with genetic predispositions for instability. Finally, one name emerged, glowing softly amidst the data stream. Sarah Walker. Her medical records were pristine. Healthy diet, moderate exercise, no history of mental illness. Her environment was equally stable. A loving partner, a supportive family, a quiet suburban community nestled amongst rolling green hills. Xyler magnified the image captured from a traffic camera. A woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, her hand resting protectively on the swell of her abdomen. He activated the surveillance drones, tiny motes of light drifting invisibly through Earth's atmosphere. Sarah Walker's life unfolded before him in a series of mundane, yet captivating scenes. She woke early, prepared a breakfast of brightly colored fruits and whole-grain toast. She walked to the local library, where she volunteered, reading stories to a group of rambunctious children. In the afternoon, she attended a prenatal yoga class, her movements graceful and deliberate. Xyler watched her laugh. With her partner, a tall, bearded man named David, they strolled through a farmer's market, selecting fresh vegetables for dinner. They sat on their porch swing, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, discussing names for their unborn child. The normalcy of it all was almost unbearable. He, a scientist from a galaxy away, was privy to their most intimate moments. A silent observer of a life he could never truly understand. One evening, as a storm gathered overhead, Sarah felt a sharp pain in her lower abdomen. She gasped, clutching her belly. David rushed to her side. His face etched with concern, he helped her to the couch, covering her with a warm blanket. Xyler monitored her vital signs, his sensors detecting a spike in cortisol levels, a surge of adrenaline. Fear was palpable, a raw, visceral emotion that resonated within him, stirring something unfamiliar in his sterile, analytical mind. Later, as the storm subsided and the moon peeked through the clouds, Sarah lay in bed, unable to sleep. She stared at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. Had the pain been real, or just a phantom sensation? Was she truly prepared for the responsibility of motherhood? A nagging feeling, a prickle of unease, crawled beneath her skin. She closed her eyes, willing herself to relax, but the feeling persisted. Outside, cloaked in shadow, the Xenarian drone remained vigilant, its sensors locked on Sarah Walker. Xyler watched, his purpose hardening that he had his subject. The experiment was about to begin. Whispers of dissent. The observation chamber sang a low, resonant note against Xyler's armored shell. Sarah Walker lay in slumber, a pale figure adrift in the inky sprawl of the apartment complex pinpointed by the Curiosity's sensors. He intensified the thermal scan. Lines of data cascaded down the luminous display. Inside her, the fetus pulsed with life. Its tiny heart, a hummingbird's frantic wings against the steady rhythm of Sarah's maternal pulse. He fine-tuned the focusing array, bathing the womb in calibrated energy, dissecting the intricate biochemical dance unfolding within. Compelling, Zyler breathed, the sound lost in the sterile air. Despite countless simulations, the subtleties of human gestation, its beautiful, untamed nature, continued to defy complete assimilation. A rasping static shattered the quiet. Zyler. Commander Thrax's visage materialized on the primary screen, his compound eyes gleaming with reflected light. Status. Zyler stiffened. Subject remains viable. Physiological markers are nominal. The hormonal flux is intricate, yet predictable. Thrax's mandibles clicked, impatience made audible. Predictable, yet you devote cycles to observing her nocturnal rhythms. We have armaments to evaluate, systems demanding refinement. This biological anomaly consumes critical resources. A prickle of irritation ran through Zyler, though his tone remained measured. The potential knowledge unlocked by understanding their reproductive patterns could prove invaluable. Envision the possibilities of manipulating it, turning it into a tactical advantage. Weaponizing. Thrax's image sharpened, his gaze drilling into Zyler. Do you still harbor that naive hope, Zyler, that we can master them, observe them safely from behind reinforced barriers? It is inquiry, Commander, Zyler countered. Comprehension, not coercion. However, strategic control may become a natural consequence. Coercion is fantasy. They are an unstable species, Zyler. Rudimentary, yet capable of unimaginable ferocity. Dissension simmers even among our ranks. Some deem this curiosity a miscalculation. They brand it a hazard, a colossal, potentially catastrophic lapse to scrutinize a race capable of such rampant growth, such unchecked aggression. Zyler shifted, his internal temperature spiking. With all respect, Commander, those are the anxieties of the timid. We are Zenarians. We wield the superior technology. We can track their every breath, foresee their every action. Can we genuinely claim to fathom the impulses of a species that ravages its own biosphere, that initiates conflict over abstract principles? They are capricious, Zyler. In gestation, this delicate choreography you're so fixated on that amplifies their unpredictability tenfold. Maternal instinct is a primal surge, a cornered predator. Have you pondered the repercussions when she discerns she's under surveillance? Zyler hadn't, not framed in those terms. His concentration had been absorbed by the science. The clinical dissection of biological functions, he had overlooked the visceral, emotional center of the undertaking. The realization was unnerving. Thrax bore down, sensing Zyler's faltering conviction. I detect uncertainty shimmering in her bioluminescence, Zyler. Good. Uncertainty is prudent. Perhaps it will finally unveil the truth. Extirpation is the only rational solution. A pristine start. A cleansed world. No, Zyler shot back, the word reverberating through the chamber. Extirpation is savagery. We are not conquerors, but discoverers. We probe, we glean, we adapt. To annihilate a species before deciphering is an act of unparalleled myopia. Thrax's countenance remained immutable. Your devotion to this doctrine is commendable, Zyler. Yet idealism has no place in survival. That I grant you one more cycle point, one more cycle to validate your experiment. Should you fail to substantiate a material gain, I will sanction the activation of contingency protocols. That understood? The screen dissolved into darkness. Zyler remained alone with the thrum of the machinery and the image of Sarah Walker, slumbering soundly. Unaware of the debates swirling around her fate, he gazed at the data streams, at the vibrant life blossoming within her, and a chilling premonition blossomed. Had his inquisitiveness rendered him oblivious to the inherent peril? The whispers of discontent, it appeared, weren't confined to the passageways of the curiosity, they echoed within his own consciousness, the unthinkable experiment. The drone of the observation chamber vibrated through Xyler as he traced Sarah Walker's form in the holographic projection. Point 16 weeks charted in cascading data. Cellular genesis, a surge of hormones, a vibrant, alien biological sonata. A prickle of unease grew within him, a whisper of possibilities previously unthinkable. The war party chafes, Xyler, Commander Thrax's voice, a metallic rasp, shattered the sterile quiet. Ramrod straight, his multifaceted eyes glinted with frigid censure. They demand action. Eradication is the only logical conclusion. Xyler pivoted, his bioluminescent patterns flaring with inner turmoil. Eradication on a foundation of ignorance. Scarcely scientific. Thrax. This generative process, it possesses an intrinsic efficiency, even within apparent chaos. Comprehension must precede action. Comprehension is superfluous. They represent a danger. Their history screams aggression. Their capacity for proliferation is irrefutable. Thrax's chitinous hand tightened around the energy weapon at his side. Arguing with Thrax was a fool's errand, Xyler knew. The commander, a scion of warriors, his intellect tempered in the crucible of conquest. But Xyler was a scholar, guided by curiosity, by the unwavering conviction that knowledge was paramount. He had reached a precipice where passive observation failed. He needed active investigation, a kind of focused scrutiny, sans annihilation, later bathed in the vibrant glow of his sanctuary lab. Xyler outlined his strategy to a chosen few: Lyra, the bioarchitect, and Kale, the temporal mechanics expert. The atmosphere thrummed with barely suppressed anxiety. Abduction. Lyra's antennae quivered, a nervous tick. Xyler, this is unprecedented. The hazards. Measured risks, Xyler countered, his tone resolute. A temporary relocation, a regulated environment, that we bring her here, conduct a cascade of non-invasive diagnostics, and return her within a cycle. Minimal disruption. The information obtainable of incalculable worth. Kale, habitually impassive, shifted uncomfortably. The temporal distortions, even a brief excursion could trigger unforeseen ripples. And the ethical dimensions, Xyler, are we not mirroring the war party's error, imposing our will on another race? The question resonated, heavy and stark. Xyler recognized the perilous line he was poised across. He surveyed Lyra and Kale, their expressions etched with apprehension. He shouldered the burden of his decision, the weight of impending events. We are students of science, he declared, his voice deep and unwavering. We seek understanding. And the quest for understanding sometimes necessitates difficult choices. We will minimize harm, that we will safeguard our well-being. This is not about subjugation, but enlightenment, about survival. The preparations commenced without delay. Kale fine-tuned the temporal matrix, his fingers a blur across the luminous console. Lyra readied the bioscanners, their lenses gleaming with predatory promise. Xyler, meanwhile, reviewed the parameters with meticulous precision, preempting every eventuality. The target coordinates: Sarah Walker, Sector Gamma, 7, Earth Standard Time, 0300 hours. The objective: a controlled examination, duration no more than 3 hours. The potential reward: the key to unlocking human reproduction, and perhaps the Xenarian salvation. Stolen moments. The curiosity hummed, a resonant drone against the indigo sky. Far below, the city pulsed with light and motion, a captivating yet jarring spectacle for Xyler. He refined the focus of his ocular implant, centering on Sarah Walker, seated on a park bench, hand cradling her pregnant belly. Tonight, the culmination of exhaustive planning, that he'd modeled every variable: atmospheric conditions, gravitational forces, even the city's erratic power grid. Flawless execution was paramount. Commence Phase 1, Xyler stated, his voice precise and clinical. On the bench, Sarah felt a sudden chill, despite her jacket. More than just the evening air, A disquieting sensation crawled over her skin. The very air seemed dense, thrumming with unseen power. She glanced around, spotting only a distant dog walker and a couple absorbed in their own world. Then, a nearly imperceptible shimmer bloomed above her, nanites, microscopic as dust motes, drifted down, erecting a transient stasis field that wasn't quite paralysis. Time itself seemed to warp, blurring the edges of reality. The dog walker became a statue mid-stride. The couple's laughter hung, suspended the faint pop, like a bubble bursting, and Sarah was gone. Aboard the Curiosity, in a pristine chamber bathed in azure light, Sarah materialized. The stasis field evaporated, leaving her breathless and disoriented. She swayed, reaching for purchase, but found only smooth, cold surfaces. Panic swelled in her throat. Where am I? The room morphed, the chilling walls receding to reveal a vibrant vista. Emerald trees swayed in a soft zephyr. Birds trilled from the branches, and the air carried the scent of damp soil and blossoming flora, a perfect simulacrum of Earth's springtime. Beautiful, undeniably, yet permeated by a sense of artifice. The sun's warmth felt excessive, the breeze too constant. Instinct whispered that something was profoundly wrong. Xyler watched from behind a clear partition, his three eyes focused and intense. Scrutiny. He'd selected this environment deliberately, a familiar and soothing backdrop to minimize anxiety and optimize physiological data acquisition. Initiate scan sequence, he ordered. Invisible beams of light washed over Sarah's body. Biometric telemetry flooded Xyler's display. Cardiac rhythm, cerebral activity, hormonal output. He registered the sharp spikes in adrenaline and cortisol, the telltale signatures of fear. He commanded the Curiosity systems to fine-tune the simulated environment, slightly raising the humidity and lowering the temperature. He was a researcher, not a tormentor. He required precise, unbiased measurements. Human gestation was an enigma beyond anything he had encountered. The very audacity of it. Internal incubation, cellular multiplication, and specialization. A biological miracle, a complex dance of hormones and genetic directives. Sarah wandered through the fabricated forest, her bare feet sinking into yielding earth. The birdsong felt mocking. She called out, her voice trembling. "Hello. Is anyone there?" Only her echo answered. Xyler observed, wrestling with ethical quandaries. Was this justified? Did the potential knowledge supersede the distress inflicted? He suppressed the doubts that he was a scientist, driven by the quest for understanding. The destiny of a species might hinge on deciphering the secrets of human reproduction. The scans intensified, zeroing in on the intricate vascular network supporting the fetus. Xyler was awestruck by the sheer energy expenditure required to sustain a growing life within another. But he zoomed in, studying the placental barrier, the delicate give and take of nutrients and waste. It was a biological concerto, a testament to the tenacity and adaptability of this primitive race. That he paused, his gaze lingering on the developing brain. Consciousness, cognition, sentience. That he wondered what Sarah was thinking, what she was experiencing. He wondered if she sensed the unseen eyes observing her. The silent machine that held her prisoner. That he recognized he was treading a perilous path, balancing scientific exploration with moral accountability. But he couldn't falter. The answers were within reach, the potential rewards immense. That he had to know, that he had to comprehend. He had to unlock the secrets of life itself, seized piece by piece in stolen moments. Awakening. Heavy lids peeled back against her world. A muted, pervasive light stabbed at her eyes, prompting a flinch. Where was she? Fragments of memory surfaced. The park, a gentle caress of breeze, sun-warmed skin as she'd been absorbed in a book. Then oblivion. A spike of dread constricted her throat. She willed herself to sit up, but her body felt weighted, uncooperative. The surface cradling her was sleek, cold, and possessed an odd give. Not a bed. Exactly. More akin to a casing. She was encased, her breath caught, The very air vibrated with a low, nearly subliminal thrum that resonated deep within her. The light intensified, flooding the casing with an otherworldly luminescence. She discerned the contours of her prison, smooth, unbroken walls, curving and flowing like polished ivory in portals. No apertures, only an unsettling, pristine perfection. Terror took root. She writhed within the confines, her hands scrabbling for purchase on the slick shell. "Help! Someone please!" The plea emerged as a choked rasp, swallowed by the humming silence. Then a voice manifested, not through her ears, but directly within her mind, distinct and resonant. Asterisk, compose yourself. Sarah Walker. You are secure. Asterisk. She stilled. Her heart slammed against her sternum, a frantic tattoo against the pervasive serenity. Who is this? What's happening? Her thoughts felt cumbersome, exposed to scrutiny. Asterisk, we are observers. Sarah Walker. We are documenting your species. Your physiology presents unique attributes. Asterisk. The voice, Xyler, she somehow intuited, resonated with a dispassionate curiosity that sent a shiver down her spine. Documenting, you abducted me. I'm pregnant. You can't just do this. The words spilled out, fueled by panic and a fierce maternal instinct. Asterisk, your gestational development is of particular interest. Rest assured, no harm will befall you or the progeny. Asterisk. Progeny. The detached label felt like a sacrilege. She instinctively shielded her abdomen, a small act of defiance. Let me go. I need medical attention that I need to. Her voice cracked, tears stinging her eyes. Asterisk, we are providing optimum care, significantly exceeding the capabilities of your planetary resources, that we have been analyzing your nutrient absorption, modulating atmospheric variables. Asterisk. A holographic projection materialized before her, cast onto the inner surface of the casing. It was a scan, an echogram. A grainy, monochromatic image of her child. She gasped, fear momentarily giving way to a surge of protective love. Asterisk, observe the maturation of the neural networks, the delicate formation of the osseous structure. Compelling. Asterisk, Xyler's clinical observation only deepened Sarah's apprehension. This wasn't about nurturing, it was about information. Please, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Just let me see it. Let me feel it moved. I need to know it's all right. The image lingered, then gradually dissolved. Asterisk, we comprehend your attachment. It is a potent biological imperative that we are recording its oscillations. Asterisk. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, hot tears tracing paths down her face. She was a specimen, a subject of study. Her baby, a set of data points. She had to escape, not merely for her own sake, but for the fragile life taking root within her. She would find resolve. Mutiny on the Curiosity. The air in the observation deck tasted like ozone and stale fear. Commander Thrax's boots echoed on the polished plasteel floor as he stalked towards the viewport. His 3 eyes narrowed in suspicion. He'd felt it. A disturbance in the ship's meticulously planned routines. Something was off. He punched up the external camera feeds, cycling through the usual nebulae and asteroid fields until he landed on Base 7. His breath hitched. Base 7, normally housing inert experimental modules, now contained a shimmering, iridescent structure of interwoven light. IT pulsed gently, casting a sickly green glow on the surrounding metal. And inside, Thrax zoomed in, his ocular implants strained, trying to make sense of the chaotic swirls within. He saw flesh, recognizable flesh, pink and soft, undeniably human. He recognized the biosignature. Sarah Walker. Rage, cold and controlled, bloomed in his chest. Xyler. That detached, unsettling observer had acted without authorization. The directive was clear: observe, catalog, but never interfere. Earth was to be purged, its resources claimed, its inhabitants eradicated. This was an unacceptable deviation. He barked into his comm, his voice a rasping growl. All militants, report to the Central Armory. Code Crimson. I repeat, Code Crimson. The response was immediate. The hum of energy weapons charging, the clatter of heavy boots on metal decks. He could feel their anticipation, their hunger for action. He had cultivated it. He would unleash it. Xyler has compromised the mission, he announced, his voice amplified throughout the armory. He has abducted a specimen, but he intends to preserve it. A wave of disgust rippled through the assembled militants. Preservation? Humanity was a disease. Our mission is clear. Eradication. The woman dies, Earth is cleansed, and Xyler will answer for his insubordination. The roar that followed shook the very foundations of the Curiosity. Thrax led the charge, his pulse rifle locked and loaded. They moved like a well-oiled machine, a symphony of destruction humming through the ship's corridors. They encountered minimal resistance. Xyler's support was primarily among the scientific observers, not the battle-hardened militants. They reached the observation deck to find it sealed. The airlock hissed, refusing to yield. Xyler had anticipated them. "Breach it," Thrax commanded, his voice devoid of emotion. The militants unleashed a torrent of plasma fire, the airlock glowing white-hot before finally buckling and collapsing inwards. They stormed into the deck, weapons raised, but Xyler wasn't there. Instead, they found Lyra, Xyler's assistant, frantically manipulating the control panel of the shimmering structure. Her slender form was dwarfed by the massive machinery. "Stop her!" Thrax roared, firing a warning shot that whizzed past Lyra's head. She didn't flinch. Her fingers danced across the panel, initiating a sequence of commands. Alarms blared throughout the ship. "She's sabotaging the Curiosity," a militant shouted, his voice laced with panic. Thrax lunged for Lyra, but she was quicker than he anticipated. She activated a small device on her wrist, releasing a blinding flash of light and a high-pitched sonic pulse. The militants staggered back, clutching their heads in agony. Lyra seized the opportunity, diving behind the shimmering structure, effectively using Sarah Walker's prison as a shield. "She's protecting the abomination." Thrax snarled, "Eliminate them both." The militants opened fire, plasma bolts tearing through the observation deck. The air crackled with energy. Lyra returned fire with a small disruptor pistol, her aim surprisingly accurate. She was buying time. But for what? Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. The artificial gravity flickered, throwing the militants off balance. Warning klaxons screamed incessantly. "What's happening?" Thrax demanded. The voice crackled over the comms, strained and frantic. "Commander, we've lost primary power. Navigation systems are failing. The Curiosity is drifting." Thrax slammed his fist against the wall in frustration. Lyra had succeeded. She had crippled the ship, and somewhere, Xyler was undoubtedly completing his own, unknown plan. The mutiny had begun, and the Curiosity was spiraling out of control. Return to Earth. The shimmering prison pulsed with a sickly green light. Sarah pressed her hands against the smooth, cold surface, the faint hum vibrating through her bones. Bay 7, she remembered the designation, screamed through the comms by a panicked voice before everything went black. Now, silence, save for the thrum of alien machinery. She was a specimen, an anomaly, the mother. Outside, alarms blared. Not the insistent, rhythmic kind, but a chaotic cacophony that seemed to claw at the very air. Red lights, strobe, painted the interior of her cell, momentarily blinding her to a shriek, metallic and piercing, echoed from the corridors. Something was happening. Suddenly, the shimmering wall flickered, spitting sparks of emerald energy. Then, with a soft pop, it dissolved. Sarah stumbled forward, her legs weak. The bay doors were open, revealing a corridor bathed in emergency lighting. Fear, sharp and immediate, threatened to paralyze her. But the instinct to protect her unborn child surged within her, pushing her forward. She moved through the corridors, guided by flickering signs she couldn't decipher, her bare feet slapping against the cold metal floor. The alarms intensified, a symphony of destruction. She risked a glance down one of the side corridors and saw them. The militants, their sleek, black armor gleamed in the red light as they scrambled, weapons raised, firing at. Nothing, or at least, nothing she could see, The air shimmered with what looked like heat distortion, and energy blasts ricocheted off unseen shields. Confusion wrestled with terror that a voice, low and urgent, buzzed in her ear. "Sarah, this way, quickly." It was a voice she hadn't heard since the abduction. Xyler. She hesitated only a moment before following the disembodied voice, darting through the chaos, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The corridors twisted and turned, an Escher painting made of steel and shadow. The alarms faded as she moved deeper, replaced by the frantic shouts of the militants, growing ever more distant. Then, she was outside. The air was cold, crisp, and smelled of rain. An open craft, small and sleek, waited on a landing platform. The door hissed open, and she climbed inside, collapsing onto the plush seating. The ship lifted off smoothly, silently. She looked back at the base, a cluster of dark shapes against the stormy sky. Explosions bloomed like poisonous flowers, lighting up the night. The militants, whatever they were under attack. Xyler was betraying them. The journey was short, disorientingly fast. The ship descended, settling gently onto a patch of overgrown grass. Sarah recognized it instantly. The edge of the woods behind her house. The door opened, and she stepped out, her bare feet sinking into the damp earth. She turned to thank Xyler, but the ship was already lifting off, disappearing into the storm clouds. She was alone. She walked through the woods, the familiar scent of pine and damp earth filling her lungs. Her house stood silhouetted against the pre-dawn sky, a beacon of normalcy in a world turned upside down. She let herself in, the click of the lock echoing in the silent house. Exhaustion washed over her as she stumbled into the bedroom, collapsing onto the bed. Sleep threatened to claim her, but her mind raced. She thought of Xyler, his voice, the sacrifices he was making. He was a traitor to his own people, risking everything to help her. Why? She remembered the fear in his eyes when he spoke of the militants, the desperation in his voice when he explained their purpose. He wasn't a monster, he was scared. And perhaps, just perhaps, he understood something about the sanctity of life, about the miracle growing inside her, that the militants couldn't grasp. A wave of empathy, unexpected and profound, washed over her. She closed her eyes, and for the first time since her abduction, she felt a glimmer of hope, not just for herself, but for the possibility of understanding, of bridging the gap between two vastly different worlds. But the hope was fragile, a flickering candle in the face of a storm. And the storm, she knew, was far from over. The militants would not simply vanish. They would retaliate, and Xyler, wherever he was, would be caught in the crossfire at a bridge of understanding. The world stilled. The sky, an instant before crisscrossed with alien fire, calmed, its violent afterglow fading like heat from forge-cooled steel that on Earth, the militants' grand design, a crippling blow against planetary defenses clearing the path for dominion, had faltered. Yet the damage was done. Shards of truth, images of extraterrestrial weaponry, pulsed through the digital veins of humanity's networks. A genie unleashed from its bottle. The curtain of secrecy, so meticulously hung, lay in tatters. Commander Thrax, a storm of fury trapped within the confines of a decaying transport circling Jupiter, smashed his hand against the control panel. Xyler, that treacherous worm, he betrayed us. His enraged bellow reverberated, stoking the fires of rebellion amongst his crew. Annihilation, that was our purpose, and by the stars, we will achieve it. Council approval or not. Meanwhile, across light years, Xyler stood before the Xenarian High Council. His pulse echoed like a slow drum in his ears within the Grand Hall, its atmosphere electric with hushed anticipation. Holographic projections danced, displaying data harvested from his studies. Cellular division, the genesis of life, the complex architecture of human DNA. Esteemed counselors, Xyler began, his voice a steady counterpoint to the room's tension. The evidence I present reveals the inherent drive for survival within the species. Their reproductive method, while unconventional, is undeniably potent. We can no longer dismiss them as a species to be swept aside, that we must comprehend them. One counselor, his features a landscape of age and skepticism, responded, "Comprehend them. They're volatile, governed by impulse, driven by desires beyond logic. They are a hazard to themselves, never mind the galaxy. Yet they also possess remarkable empathy, ingenuity, and an iron will," Zyler countered, gesturing towards the displays. "Qualities we have strived to foster within our own society for epochs. Extinction is not the path. Understanding is." He paused, meeting each counselor's gaze. "I propose a restricted, ethically managed research initiative. We must analyze their generative cycle, their genetic blueprint, their adaptability, without inflicting undue suffering." The chamber held its breath. Humanity's destiny hung precariously at last. The eldest counselor, her voice "We can no longer dismiss them as a species to be swept aside, that we must comprehend them." One counselor, his features a landscape of age and skepticism, responded, "Comprehend them. They're volatile, governed by impulse, driven by desires beyond logic. They are a hazard to themselves, never mind the galaxy. Yet they also possess remarkable empathy, ingenuity, and an iron will," Zyler countered, gesturing towards the displays. "Qualities we have strived to foster within our own society for epochs. Extinction is not the path. Understanding is." He paused, meeting each counselor's gaze. "I propose a restricted, ethically managed research initiative. We must analyze their generative cycle, their genetic blueprint, their adaptability, without inflicting undue suffering." The chamber held its breath. Humanity's destiny hung precariously at last. The eldest counselor, her voice a resonant hum, broke the silence. "The information is persuasive, Zyler, and your unconventional approach warrants consideration. We sanction a constrained research program, bound by rigorous ethical constraints, and experimentation on conscious beings except when medically essential. Focus on unobtrusive observation and hereditary study." A collective exhalation, barely audible, swept through the hall. A stay of execution, a tentative bridge, reaching across the chasm of alien perception. Back in Base 7, Sarah Walker remained cocooned within the shimmering structure, unaware of the political currents shaping her destiny. She was a subject of study, an enigma, a key to deciphering the mysteries of human procreation. Zyler, his research position restored, though under intense observation, approached the containment field. Through the crystalline barrier, he watched Sarah, her dormant